supporters will you draw upon as resources to help achieve your top educational priorities?
All right, thank you. This is my top priority, as I mentioned in my introduction, is to bring back vocational programs and help train our students so that they can obtain a job, an employment. And I really think it's important because, as we all know, not everyone's going to college, and what are we going to do with the 30–40% that are just hanging out in our communities? And I think we owe them. They've been in our school system for 12–13 years. We owe them a job other than Burger King and working for a minimum wage. They should be able to support themselves until they are ready to move forward and go to college and make that choice on their own. But again, that's my top priority. My second one is spending $90 million for a test to show accountability. I'm just not real kosher with that. I think it's a disjustice that we spend so much money on high-stakes testings, and what are we really testing? We are testing and creating really great test takers, but can they think and be able to function in life? I don't know. I hear a lot of complaints, and we need to address those issues.
Thank you very much, Mrs. Anzaldua. Would you like the question repeated? Okay.
Thank you. The priorities that I have: get rid of nickel-B. No child left behind has to go. It's not what we need in place right now. Who would I ask to help? Of course. Starting with the constituents here in Texas, our politicians, our educators here in upper education, higher education, and then the nickel-B also forces us to have our schools so that we have to keep the children there. Otherwise, we get charged as an unsafe school. Unsafe school. We can't expel kids because then we're touted as an unsafe school. And that's what's making the education system fail, because you've got children there that don't want to be there, and we need to be able to get rid of them. Get rid of nickel-B.
Thank you very much, Mr. Cortez.
My priorities are simple. One, to be an advocate against micromanaging as the highest forms of education. The state board thinks that because it has a majority, it can do whatever it likes. Be a strong voice against it. I have to take the fight to their backyard. We will. You know, we can get groups from AFT to stand with us, TSTA and other like organizations to come in and help. One of the things that you'll find with me as a member of the State Board of Education is that, like all parents, I simply want the best for my kids. As a parent of children that are in public school, you know, that's how I started this journey as a school board member. I started to stop complaining about the educational system in my community. I decided to roll up my sleeves and do something about it. That journey has brought me to this day, where I'm running for the State Board of Education. And so, whatever decisions I make, you can rest assured that I make them with my children in mind. And knowing that, it impacts everybody else in this community, everybody else in this great state. I'd also like to see under my watch some system where the State Board of Education can cover the cost for digital textbooks through some sort of technology media like an iPad or HP or some kind of a Dell tablet.
Thank you very much. Mr. Garza,
Would you please repeat the question?
yes, the question is, what are your top priorities related to public education? And what allies and supporters will you draw upon as resources to help achieve your top educational priorities?
I think we need to understand the role of the state is to provide an educational system, but the role of the local districts is to make it operational. My goal would be to have SBOE be a facilitator for the local entities to make it more flexible for them to do the job. The state would provide a basic framework of understanding of what the academic system should be like, and the state board would be more of an enhancer as opposed to an enforcer of legislating mandates and regulations and rules. We need to make the classroom more accessible for our teachers to teach and our students to learn, to give them that viability to become more imaginative as opposed to just structured on testing, testing, and testing. So my thing would be, again, to be a bottom-up instead of a top-down communicator, facilitator, in order to collaborate and commit to the goals that are necessary to make this state and our educational system the most viable and the most forceful in the whole United States of the United States. So that would be my goal, is to make it more flexible and make bring in all the stakeholders, educators, educator groups, communities, parents, students, administrators, all alike, to collaborate and enhance our information system so we can put the right systems in place.
Thank you, Mr. Garza. Ms. Sanchez?
My top priorities would be appropriate funding that yield the best and highest returns for our money. And of course, I would rely on the experts in both of my priorities and in the practitioners. Curriculum standards, since I am in curriculum instruction and I've spent my life studying it, that would be one of my top priorities. The curriculum standards need to be relevant and balanced. And somehow, we need to align the 5 accountability systems that we are currently under with the state and the feds. We need to align them so that teachers aren't worried about which accountability system am I pleasing here? Which one do I ignore and which one do I follow? They're not aligned, they're not currently aligned. And I believe that if we align our curriculum standards and we look at what's relevant and balanced, then the accountability systems and this testing that goes on is next. Wish I could say more about that. That's my
Thank you very much. Round of applause for all the candidates. We've been through our 10 questions. I also want to thank our audience for being here tonight. And we have some questions that have come from you, and we'd like to ask a couple. I'm actually going to combine 2 that I see here. And we'll take the first one again, starting in alpha order with Ms. Anzaldua. The question is, how critical is our coming election in November to the future of public education in Texas? And I would say beyond just the state board, but in general. And I'm going to combine the second question where I'd like for you to relate that to your reaction to the funding cuts. Were they necessary? Do we need to restore them, and how? What are your comments on funding public education in Texas?
Elections are always important because you vote for who you want to represent you. Now, the funding cuts, yes. Right now, our entire system is in disarray financially, and our schools have received funding cuts, and we've managed to run the schools with these cuts. So what does that say? We've been running the schools with the cuts. My program has been cut once, twice, 3 times now, and we keep being able to manage. But overall, at the higher level, they haven't made their cuts. They've been forcing us to make the cuts. So we need to look at who is up there at the top and demanding that we at the lower level make the cuts, but there's no cuts made up on the top level. How do we deal with this? We're Americans. We have the know-how. There's no money there, we'll take care of it. And I feel that some or other, they have overlooked education, I agree. And that's what our future is the education.
Thank you, Mr. Cortez.
I think that the Republican supermajority in the House and the Senate has gone off the deep end. It's the only way I can put it. When you cut $5.4 billion in public education, you know, you hear all these horror stories across the nation where we're in this huge recession and they're bailing out the auto industry and the financial industry, and they talk about how it's too big to fail. Well, I have have news for everybody in here. Our children are too important to fail. Our Texas teachers are too important to fail. So if you ask me if this is an important election, absolutely. Absolutely, this is an important election. I think that we all need to go out and vote. We all need to make sure that we get our friends, our family, out to the polls, because this is probably one of the most critical election cycles that we're going to have.
Thank you very much, Mr. Garza.
I would concur with Mrs. Berlanga's opening comments to the fact that public education is under attack. And it's been under attack for a number of years now. It's only come to the surface as of late because of the cuts that were made in education and across the board. We cannot afford not to invest in education. Investing in education is the only way for us to succeed if we're going to grow our economy, if we're going to make this state a viable state that it needs to be. Most people would look at it as an expense, whereas I tend to look at it as an investment, because that's the only avenue that we have. We cannot, the investment that we have, the problem we have with the investment is it's not going to be immediate, the outcome. It's going to be long-term. But we cannot afford not to put ourselves at a deficit in order to reach that long-term goal. What's happened up to now could have been avoided. There were rainy day funds that this legislature refused to give to public education and higher education that would have helped minimize the impact at the local level. That's an avenue that I think we need to continue to pursue. But again, strides need to be made, but we have to have that goal ahead of us and then make a determined goal process to reach that goal. It may not be over the next year or two, but as long as we continue to work towards that, we'll achieve it. But if we cut back on that, then we just minimize our chances of success.
Ms. Sanchez.
I believe the cuts were excessive and unnecessary to overload our classrooms. And in my district, we have overloaded our classrooms because of the 4 million, and to us, 4 million, a small district, poor district, the 8th ranked poorest district in the state of Texas. 4 million, which in the end turned out to be 8 million for us, was a lot of money to lose. And we had to lose teachers and we had to overload our classrooms. That was unnecessary. Our governor today can stop this. He has the authority right now, tomorrow morning, to call a special session to stop this, and he refuses to do it. We have signed the petition to get him to do that. We have signed the petition for the legislators to get them to listen to us, and our district has joined the lawsuit with other school districts. And MALDEF is helping us with that lawsuit against the funding cuts. And there was a second part to your question, but
Well, the two was how important are the November elections, and how did you react? How do you react to the funding cuts? And I think you covered both of those.
Very important. I think every State Board of Education member is up for re-election because now they've been going to staggered terms. So right now the voters in the state of Texas have the authority to put in a whole new board.
Thank you very much, Ms. Turner.
Election cycle, every election is important because funding is always gets tossed to the back. Funding education is not always very important to our legislatures. And I agree, education is an investment and we should be investing in it. Education is the foundation of our society. We've managed to find $90 million to start this STAR exam. We could have put it off. We didn't have to start it this year. We could have used that $90 million and funded our schools and not lay off our teachers and our parents and our help. Right? Education needs to be a priority, and without our voice, it will not be. So we need to advocate, and I've been advocating for 6 months now, and I'm telling everyone where the money is going, and it should be